welcome to Let's Get Defensive. You tuned in last week to see a grueling match of two individuals defending attacks from each other under a controlled and moderated environment.
No, Brian, that's the presidential debate. I think you're in the wrong news channel for that.
Right. Welcome to Let's Get Defensive, our live show where we have searched and scoured the news feeds to find interesting articles in aerospace and defense.
So the show today is in two parts, everybody. Number one, we are picking out the top defense news of the last 7 days, figuring out the biggest challenge for them in the product lifecycle and debating that with our own thoughts around how we'd go about solving them. Second up, we're then going to move into our special guest. Joining us this week is Justin Gable, who is very able, who's talking us into the grease and hard metal of infrastructure in the critical thread. It's the foundations of everybody's delivery dreams of new products. Guys, I've just landed this morning in the second largest, coincidentally, aerospace and defense market in the world, none other than the United Kingdom. Landed in Heathrow, grabbed a couple of hours sleep before pulling a late one tonight because we've got customers tomorrow, talking them through the whole critical thread and getting them into manufacturing quicker and more profitably.
Well, Andrew, I'm glad you made it there safely. It sounds like we've got a lot to pack in this morning.
Oh, yeah, we're talking about Lockheed Martin, Korean Aerospace Industries, Hensoldt, L3 Technologies, Airbus. None of us can pronounce things today. Embraer, Crane Aerospace, Teledyne, Safran, and MBDA. And it's very interesting that, even though you're in a new location, Andrew, you've still got the TV screen with news in the background. Like I
know I got Bloomberg playing again, huh? Keep it up.
So yeah, let's dive in with some news. Greg, what do you have for us first here?
Sounds great. First up, the Egyptian Air Force has acquired two C-130J-30 Super Hercules tactical airlifters from Lockheed Martin through a U.S. foreign military sale, marking Egypt as the 23rd nation to operate the aircraft. The C-130J-30 will bolster Egypt's already extensive C-130H fleet, which is really going to enhance their ability to support military, humanitarian aid, disaster response missions, both regionally and globally. Lockheed Martin's highlighted Egypt's history as a key operator of the Hercules model.
Interesting. So we're talking about a nation expanding its fleet with new technology that needs to seamlessly integrate into its existing, probably somewhat antiquated fleet, and then it has to stand the test of time. To me, this is the big challenge. Egypt's got an existing C-130H fleet, and now they're adding the C-130J-30, the Super Hercules. How do you manage the life cycle of a mixed fleet with different capabilities, different maintenance needs, different operational timelines? Brian, you got to agree with me on this one. This is probably the toughest part of the whole product life cycle for them.
Oh yeah, I totally agree that maintenance has to be the huge thing to consider, because when you're dealing with different planes, what differences do you need as far as the parts you got to have around, the equipment you need to have around to maintain those, and even the facilities. So I think maintenance is going to be the biggest challenge that needs to be conquered.
Exactly. You got your different upgrade press, you've got different maintenance protocols, and it's not just about the aircraft today, it's about keeping them flying for the next probably 20, 30 years over there. How do you synchronize all of that? To be honest, this is where critical thread comes into play. The first thing that springs to mind is predictive maintenance and AI-driven predictive maintenance, rather than routine, unnecessary cycles of maintenance, which can waste a lot of time and resources on things that may or may not even need maintaining as you go. So you've got to integrate AI models to track the wear and tear on both the older C-130s and the new C-130J-30s in real time. And the way you predict failures before they happen, optimize maintenance schedules and resources, and keep both aircraft types operational without unexpected downtime. Basically, that's how you keep a mixed fleet running smoothly. And you've got to have then the whole training piece of how do you upskill your workforce. And then we can get into AR, VR training headsets to teach them how to adapt to a new aircraft as it comes in as well.
And it only took one article for Andrew to start talking about AI.
I love it. South Korea's KF-21 Boramae fighter program is advancing toward mass production, with the first 20 aircraft expected by 2027. Hanwha Aerospace was actually awarded a multi-year contract to supply its F414 engines for the KF-21. Developed by Korean Aerospace Industries, the KF-21 is a cost-effective alternative to the F-35, designed with advanced air-to-air capabilities and potential unmanned loyal wingman to support missions. Despite its progress, initial production numbers have been reduced, and the UCAV supporting drones may be downsized without losing effectiveness. Is that possible? The involvement of over 600 South Korean companies in the program, though, does highlight the nation's focus on domestic manufacturing and technological self-reliance. Feels like a lot, though.
You've talked about how the initial production number has been reduced and some changes in design. And we know that when creating a product, changes can happen. The design changes in requirements. And it's interesting to note that this particular design cycle has been going for more than a decade.
A decade of design. Where did you get that from?
I mean, over 10 years of designing so that the KF-21 was developed as part of a $6.6 billion project to replace the aging fleet of the F-4 and F-5 fighters.
How do you stay competitive with our competitors / enemies who are turning things around in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? That's incredibly long.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things they're trying to make this all domestically built, and as Greg highlighted,
okay,
during 10 years of development, I mean, that's enough time that you've actually seen a lot of evolution in PLM processes and software. Technology has jumped. I mean, AI was basically still science fiction when this program was started. Yeah. So, and it's interesting because like one of the spokespersons for the project said that a change in aircraft design can occur anytime during the design iteration if a revised design is expected to meet the requirements. And so, that's obviously happened quite a bit over here. And I think it just really serves to highlight the importance of change management. And so how you're going to integrate that change management into your PLM system, even if your PLM system changes over the time you've been creating this. So how do you track changes, archive revisions, manage changes, even send notes and comments between the designers and the other areas? Compare all these results and have this basically in some sort of one source of truth PLM platform.
Yep. I also just want to go back to the 600 partner companies that Greg, you mentioned. When you've got over 600 parties involved in this, coordinating that supply chain and making sure everything aligns is a massive challenge. This is the big challenge for me. Keeping all the suppliers together, keeping them on track, making sure that the parts meet the design and the quality standards, ensure everything aligns with the production schedule. Brian, you got to admit that's probably at a tactical level the number one problem for me. Something as complex as a next gen fighter jet, even a small delay can have a real big ripple effect across the entire program. For me, you've mentioned change. For me, the two other big things are requirements traceability and supplier alignment. So every supplier needs to be aligned with mission critical requirements. That means tracing every part, every material, every component right back to its design and performance requirements, making sure that every company is on the same page to meet quality and delivery expectations. And then the second one for me is configuration management, using config management to track and control ever evolving designs, ensuring that all the parts are compatible and meeting the latest design updates. That's just going to avoid your issues with discrepancies across the suppliers and keeps your production streamlined. So there we go. And have you noticed, I've got one question for you. Have you noticed that the aircraft on the front end looks a little bit like the F-22 Raptor?
I did not notice that.
And it's not a coincidence. I researched this one. It's because Lockheed Martin provided technical support during early stage designs. So looks pretty cool.
One of the companies you were talking about of these 600 partner companies, one of them is Hanwha Aerospace, which was awarded a multi-year contract to supply the F-414 engines. And for me, this speaks to the need not only for the integration you were talking about, but also for just planning and scalability on Hanwha's side, as well as how they're integrating that into the aircraft. And I think whenever we look at any of this, you've also got to figure out what data are you sharing with all these other companies, and how are you protecting your IP in that data share, and still able to make sure that the requirements are met on all ends of any kind of integration that has to happen.
Yep. Common platform, as you say, which you touched on earlier, and making sure all the approval and authority levels are there, and protection layers are in there. Agreed.
Hensoldt has developed a compact interference-resistant radar system for monitoring uncontrolled airspace, recently tested through flight trials with drones and a helicopter by the German Aerospace Center. This radar, part of the MIMO Air project, includes a MIMO radar sensor and a post-processor that ensures reliable tracking of aircraft in urban areas. The system's AI-driven adaptability, which I know we say a lot, AI-driven adaptability allows it to react with changing environments while really maintaining a small, lightweight design. I mean, these advancements are going to play a crucial role in integrating air taxis and other urban air mobility systems into controlled airspace safely.
For sure, for sure. But, yeah, I agree. But you're developing a new radar system for monitoring airspace, and that's great. But how do you ensure that that technology evolves with the air mobility systems it's supposed to integrate with? That, to me, is the big challenge. The radar needs to work in very unpredictable environments, with drones, with helicopters, with air taxis you mentioned, all while you're adapting to rapidly changing technology coming through from those different pieces of equipment. Brian, agree? Toughest part?
I'm going to say, and I might harp on this too much, but I'm going to say that quality is the most important for me here, because, well, anytime you're dealing with things flying, and especially if they're going to fly around people, you want to make sure things are safe, tested, nice, good quality, right? And I think this is both for virtual test and physical test, which, you mentioned they tested in drones and helicopter, but they had to test the physical product as well as all the software and the uses. And the software here is pretty cool. Being able to warn of obstacles, use all the AI integration to just know what's happening in the air around you and changing environmental conditions. And then how do you actually test all of that? I think there's actually a whole can of worms open up when you have to test AI and make sure it's working correctly. We've seen that with autonomous driving. Well, now we're in the air. There's a whole different things. And then, of course, the air taxis. Like, do you all think that we are ready in general, or this is going to be in Germany first? Looks like that German citizens are going to be ready for air taxis.
Yeah, like the rest of the world. I'm just going to interrupt you because Conan's joined us again this week. Conan Callan, thanks again. He said, are the AI systems locally based or cloud based? Great question, Conan. We tend to look at a bit of a blend. Depends if you're looking at NLP stuff and you want to pull in through OpenAI. But I think what we're really looking at here is less of that, a lot more of the kind of machine learning models that are out there. So they tend to be generally in a cloud-based environment that we deploy with customers. So hopefully that answers your question.
If the AI systems are locally on the things that are flying around in the air,
at the edge,
aren't they technically cloud-based?
Yeah, they are. If they're edge, because they're
floating in the air, they have to be cloud-based.
Correct.
Sorry, I couldn't get away from this.
Oh, you were just going with a bad joke again. I'm sorry, buddy. I missed it. Thankfully.
And on that note, it's time for you to recover, and we get to do a quick commercial news break.
L3 Technologies has secured a nearly $600 million contract to design and produce electronic warfare test articles and fleet prototypes for the U.S. Navy and the Royal Australian Air Force. This project is really going to be supporting the next generation jammer low band program for the EA-18G Growler aircraft. It does include developing various pods and systems such as simulators and mission prototypes, really to enhance that low band capability. It sounds like work's going to span multiple locations across the U.S. and is set to be completed by 2029.
Oh,
We've got new contract, new work, new opportunities here. But what's super interesting to me, at least, is that this is a cost plus incentive contract, which means there are some strong incentives for the design and production process to be efficient. There's a need to appropriately plan how you're going to tackle this project, starting with, I think, is a great time you want to start with the overall PLM system. So what are you using to design for iterations, for change management requirements and testing? And how are you getting all of that data over to manufacturing? And can manufacturing, see the designs during the design phase and use the models that are changing during design to even start planning before design is finished, and ways to help save time and be faster and more efficient when you create this.
Yeah, we're also looking at new tech here. This is for the next generation jammer low band program, so to compete with kind of other militaries that operate in that kind of low band network. So you've got to now really bring innovation into this. So you need that platform to suck in your innovation into the overall process.
And that jammer low band program is for the Navy EA-18G Growler and the Australian Air Force, and the work's being spread across, 8 different locations. So that's telling me there's a huge need for coordination and real-time data sharing.
Yep, definitely a program that's going to benefit from a collaborative program platform, as mentioned already. So obviously we work a lot with things like 3D Experience platform, make sure that we put that in for collaboration across the enterprise and the suppliers. For me, the big issue again, and I'm going to go there, it's just too slow. 2029 speaks to the point that I've been writing about for the last few weeks, which is we're taking way too long from ideation to customers' hands in the defense sector when we're trying to be highly competitive in a very technologically advanced enemy warfare environment. We really need to take a serious review of how we are ideating and bringing into actual production into the customer's hands. For me, the first place we start with is starting looking at customers and forming a digital transformation roadmap. Where are the threat breaks? Where are the silos? Where are the manual systems? How do we remove those over a period of time to speed up time to manufacture, time to customer? But getting back to this one, for me, number one challenge is design and change across multiple locations. So solution is coordinate the design, development, testing of electronic warfare systems across multiple locations is going to present the biggest challenge. Ensuring that all of your design changes, your updates, your integrations are tracked and aligned across different teams and sites is essential to avoid misalignments that could compromise the performance of this next gen jammer low band system and delay delivery.
And when you're putting together a project like this, you've got to look at what are we running this on, what computers, what software, what infrastructure, which will be a great way. I think in a few minutes, we're going to actually be able to dive in with an expert on that to also talk about the whole infrastructure layout. But before we go there, what's our next article, Greg?
Yep. Next up, Airbus Defence and Space has partnered with Rohde & Schwarz to enhance communication systems for the Royal Navy. The collaboration, which of course was formalized through a memorandum of understanding, is really aiming to improve communication resilience through cutting-edge technologies from both companies. So love to see this collaboration. Rohde & Schwarz will integrate its secure communication systems with Airbus Maritime Network Evolution product to provide the Royal Navy with robust and secure connectivity across a couple different, a lot of different operational scenarios. The partnership
this is a systems integration issue for me. Yeah. You're dealing with secure communication systems that need to operate seamlessly across naval missions, different technologies, and making sure that they work flawlessly under pressure. Brian, do you think getting these systems to align is going to be the hardest part?
I think, yeah, because I mean, well, collaboration between any two companies always is going to have to deal with getting everything to align together. And
Yep.
so I- that's the biggest thing is how's the integration going to happen where the Royal Navy is going to be able to benefit from the improved communication capabilities and that seamless connectivity you just talked about is pretty much just the crux of the matter with your data transfer, your speed of data transfer, and
Yep.
how they're all talking together.
And security, exactly. So we're talking about multiple systems coming together, and they all need to perform at peak level, whether it's for routine missions or high pressure combat scenarios. Fixing it lies with requirements traceability from the critical thread for me. So by embedding your traceability into the entire life cycle, we ensure that each and every requirement from secure data transfer to real-time communication stays aligned across both Airbus and Rohde & Schwarz systems. This is just going to make integration smoother. It's going to make it more reliable and resilient under operational scenarios.
I'll tell you, I was excited about this article because I thought we were going to be talking about Star Wars, but this is still pretty cool. The Hungarian Air Force has received its first KC-390 Millennium multi-mission aircraft from Embraer as part of a contract signed in 2020. Delivered just a couple days ago, the aircraft is notable for its versatility, including a roll-on, roll-off intensive care unit for medical and humanitarian missions. The KC-390 can also perform air-to-air refueling, cargo transport, troop deployment, and search and rescue missions. Pretty versatile aircraft here. Fully compatible with NATO standards, it offers faster speeds and higher payload capacity compared to other military transport aircraft. Now, here's the question. How do manufacturing innovations contribute to enhanced payload and speed capabilities of the KC-390?
Now, before answering that question, I just want to clarify. You thought this was Star Wars just because it said Millennium in the title?
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay, Star Wars. Okay.
I think we need an entire new show about the PLM and manufacturing all of the tech in Star Wars. That's got to be like a whole different.
I think I'm in for that.
Sign me up. Speaking of just the innovations here, I think this is the first aircraft that has a roll-on, roll-off intensive care unit. And so all of those humanitarian uses, medical evac missions, even cargo and troop transport is huge. And of course, you've got with that precision cargo, airdrop, paratrooping, the air-to-air refueling you mentioned, search and rescue, a lot of really cool stuff. But just to harp on a point Andrew's made a little while through our news today, we are in what, 2024? The contract for this was signed back in 2020. Yeah. So that means that we've had design to delivered in 4 years. And with everything that goes into this, with requirements management, with new design innovations, with cost savings, I think that there's got to be some pretty good PLM planning happening during this process, because of course there were some hiccups, and I'm pretty sure that Andrew might also say it's still too long, but we'll dive into that, I'm sure, in a moment. But it is interesting because Bosco da Costa Jr., which is the president and CEO of Embraer Defense and Security, said that this aircraft delivers an unbeatable combination of performance, flexibility, and reduced life cycle cost, which is going to make it the airlift of choice in Europe.
To Mike Khalil's point, thanks, Mike. Appreciate you jumping in there. Mike says almost 5 years. He's right. And I'm assuming design started at point of contract, or maybe it had started earlier. But 4 or 5 years is kind of the average, I'll be honest, versus the competition, which is 3 to 4 years, just to be blunt about it. I think the big thing here is the C-390, I don't know if you picked this up, can carry a payload of 26 tons. We were talking earlier about the C-130J30 Super Herc. That has a payload of 21.7. So good job, Embraer. You've just got something which is kind of leading the way. Furthermore, the C-130J30 Super Herc travels at a cruising speed of 657 kilometers an hour, versus the C-390, which travels at 870 kilometers an hour. So not only were they quicker than the 9-year, 10-year timeframes we were hearing about earlier, but they produced something at a higher level of performance. So good job.
Yeah, it's carrying a lot more. It's flying a lot faster, and it has that nifty air-to-air refueling where a Millennium can actually dispense and receive fuel from another one. I think the design here is pretty impressive.
I want to go back to what Greg was asking. Greg's question was about process optimization for manufacturing efficiency. The challenge here lies in ensuring that your advanced manufacturing processes driving the KC-390's increased payload capacity and speed, such as use of lightweight materials, streamlined aerodynamics, are efficiently integrated into your production without compromising your quality, without compromising your timelines. So managing these innovations across various stages of production while maintaining compliance with your NATO standards just brings a whole new level of complexity. Solution, two big ones for me on this: process planning and bills of process optimization. You need to optimize your BOP, your bill of process, by analyzing your entire production workflow, making sure that the lightweight materials and advanced aerodynamic designs are integrated smoothly without adding bottlenecks. That's going to make sure that your production stage is perfectly aligned with the next with the next one to keep you on time. And then the second point I wanted to mention was requirements traceability for compliance. So by ensuring that every requirement is tracked right from the start, from design through manufacturing, you can be certain that both NATO standards and performance benchmarks, your payload, your speed, are met without cutting corners. This traceability is going to ensure that nothing falls through the cracks from material sourcing to final assembly. So big one. But well done, Embraer.
And making sure that nothing falls through the cracks, check out this next fun 2 minutes worth of headlines, and we'll get back in the next article in 2 minutes. I know Greg was just ready to dive into the next article. I knew you were ready for it, but I just have to let you know that you've got some weekend reading for you, Greg.
Yeah.
Because there's a
related Star Wars. Oh, this is fantastic. Conan, thank you. And I'm excited to continue these conversations. I truly think the whole conversation that we had with the KC-390 Millennium is how we figure out how to run the Kessel run in less than 12 parsecs. It'll be great. It'll be a good time for sure. Deutsche Aircraft.
What did he just say?
Andrew.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I'll send you a link to a movie on Disney or something. Has selected Crane Aerospace and Electronics to supply proximity sensing systems for its D328 Eco, a regional turboprop aircraft. This partnership continues a previous collaboration where Crane provided similar systems for the older D328 model. The new D328 Eco is powered by two fuel-efficient Pratt & Whitney engines and is designed to support sustainable aviation fuel. Features modern avionics, enhanced safety, which you know I'm always a fan for, reducing pilot workload. Here's my question, though. How does integrating advanced proximity sensing technology improve aircraft safety and efficiency during the production? It feels like it might extend efficiency, but during production and operational stages.
Okay, here's the thing for me, just firstly, you're integrating advanced proximity sensing tech into both the production process and operational use. So that's a big challenge. How do you make sure that your systems are improving efficiency without causing bottlenecks back in your manufacturing or adding unnecessary complexity into operational stages? Brian, to me, that's the big issue on this one.
I am going to do something novel here, and I'm just going to say that I agree.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Well, that's put me on the hop. Now I got to justify it even more so. To me, it's about balancing tech improvements with operational simplicity. You need the sensing systems to enhance your safety and efficiency without adding more layers of complexity. So we agree on that. This is where you need a strong mess mom, a strong manufacturing operations management solution. Integrating proximity sensing systems into the MOM framework allows you to monitor real-time coordination of your production processes. It ensures that the sensing systems are aligned with the production schedule, minimizes your disruptions while ensuring that your safety enhancements don't add that complexity we've been talking about on the operational side. It's about synchronizing the entire product lifecycle while keeping things simple for the end user.
It's great. Sweden recently announced its 17th military aid package to Ukraine, valued at just over 400 million pounds, bringing the total support to just over 4 billion. This package includes spare parts for JAS-39 Gripen CD fighter jets, indicating Sweden's potential future transfer of these aircraft to Ukraine. Now, while Ukraine is prioritizing the integration of F-16 fighters, discussions about the Gripen remain ongoing. Sweden's cautious approach reflects concerns about its own defense needs, especially after joining NATO, and the complexity of maintaining multiple aircraft systems.
You know, the JAS-39C is I think a single seat model, which actually has in-flight refueling, some updated avionics, and a lot of weapons options. The 39D is a two-seat variant that has modifications for training and specialized missions. And between the C and the D, this was seen, but also as we go forward into newer versions, that we're looking at the potential life extension of a product. So, you know, these parts, which are intended for the C and D models, are currently being reused in the construction of the 39E aircraft. So by procuring new components, as opposed to taking the opponents and like dismantling the C&Ds, by procuring the new components, the Swedish government is possibly keeping these C&Ds open for donation to Ukraine.
Let's talk about that a little bit more in a second. Did it really kind of open up the fascinating aspects of PLM after production, because you're using parts from one plane to the next. So you're really having that traceability, that lifetime. And I think people forget product lifecycle is a pretty long period of life. So yeah, a lot of that can pull through from previous models. Very interesting.
Yeah, this is showing the ideas of operating and maintaining your fleet, because in order to maintain it, like we talked about in the very first article today, you've got to have specialized maintenance tools and methods to support your fleet. So when you're using the same kind of family of aircraft, you can do that and reuse them as you make the new aircraft. But when you're looking at, let's say, you know, donating the Gripen jets to the Ukraine, where they already have a whole bunch of F-16s pledged by other countries, then you know, the Ukraine would have to deal with how are you going to maintain all those things, where the complexity is of maintaining two different types of fighter jets. And I think,
That's,
Andrew, you mentioned that this can be a really long process for this maintenance, right? So like development for the Gripens began in the 1970s.
wow.
I hate to say it, but I actually do remember it as a kid. Being a bit of a, boys will be boys, and you're like weapons and you're into that kind of stuff. I remember that Gripen around coming out of Sweden. I really do. So I think it's been operational for probably 35 years, not necessarily 50. I think that was the initial ideation. So it only took them 15 years to get it into operation. But what's interesting is that they've done AB, they've done CD, and they've got EF models as well. But what they're giving to Ukraine are the CDs, did you say?
Yeah. Well, they
they're
might
giving
get
the old ones. So the CDs are about 25 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But the whole thing is just going to show a lot of stuff here, but I think just the integration of parts and how you're going about, extending the life. Because if something's been flying for 20, 25 years,
the biggest issue is maintenance on this whole thing. I think, don't you? I mean, the ensuring that the integration of all of those spare parts, the maintenance schedules, the system upgrades across different platforms while maintaining your operational readiness is going to be super complex, especially given Sweden's own defense needs after joining NATO as well. So they've got all of that kind of new stuff coming on board. Two big solutions: requirements traceability, cross lifecycle management, and change and configuration management. So to manage that maintenance and lifecycle of a JAS-39 Gripen alongside F-16s that Ukraine are getting needs a clear and comprehensive requirements traceability framework. So that's got to be set up. Love that kind of stuff. And then the changing config management. As Ukraine integrates those F-16s and potentially the 39 Gripens into the air fleet, change in configuration will be essential to track and monitor updates, modifications, systems changes across the platforms. This process is the only process really that will ensure that both aircraft systems remain operational and compatible with new upgrades and minimize your kind of downtime. So.
Teledyne FLIR Defense is set to deliver its Star Sapphire 380 HLD multispectral imaging systems to the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force as part of a $20 million contract. These advanced systems are going to be integrated into the JAM-SDF, Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force, SH-60L helicopters, which I think are generally used for anti-submarine and anti-surface warfare missions, search and rescue, maritime surveillance. I mean, I know it already offers long-range performance, laser targeting, high-definition visual and thermal imagery, but it'll enhance the helicopter's intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance capabilities.
This is really interesting because I knew this was going to happen. We saw Japan announce its defense budget for this year quite some time back. 15 to 16% increase in Japan defense budget. That's huge. I can't think of a country globally, certainly of their maturity, that has increased budget that much. Obviously, it speaks to the nearby threat, maritime threat, which is why it makes total sense. The real issue here isn't just integrating these systems. It's about ensuring that these advanced ISR capabilities perform optimally across all of the different missions that these helicopters are going to be taking. The big challenge is how do you make sure that the Star Sapphire 380 enhances anti-submarine warfare, such as rescue and maritime surveillance, without compromising performance in any other area? I mean, Brian, question, don't you think balancing these diverse mission requirements is going to be the toughest part?
Yeah, I think that, quality of making sure that you aren't compromising performance has got to be one of the biggest things of how you're balancing. As you said, the uses were anti-submarine, anti-surface warfare, search and rescue, maritime missions. And it's got that laser targeting and the high definition visual thermal imagery, like all sorts of really cool stuff happening here.
Yeah,
I think quality is huge, but I also think that integration, how are you going to integrate with all the various systems that are going to interact with the SA Fire, right? Like how because the imaging that it's going to see has to be read by things and used by things.
Sure.
That data's got to be used. I think you've got quality and integration as the biggest things here.
Yeah, I agree. Quality management, certification processes have all got to be in there. Requirements traceability has got to be in place. I think the one big one which we've not touched on in the show this week is product validation simulation. To me, that's simulation tools, AI tools, again, to run AI-driven simulations to test how that Sapphire performs across mission scenarios before full deployment, such as different environments, different conditions, mission profiles to identify any weaknesses up front before getting out into the field when it's a little bit too late.
Yeah. Safran and MBDA, two major European arms companies, are in discussions about the future of their jointly owned propulsion systems business, Roxel. The talks could result in MBDA acquiring Safran's 50% stake, I think it's 50-50 split, which produces solid propulsion systems for missiles and rockets. I mean, this deal could streamline MBDA's operations for sure, potentially speeding up missile development. We've talked a lot about speeding up this show, boosting its competitive standing in the defense industry globally. The potential acquisition does come at a time of increasing geopolitical tensions, which does signal a strategic move toward consolidating Europe's defense capabilities.
Now, Greg, when you're looking at a company that might be acquired by another company, even if it already has 50% stake in it, there's a lot of HR complexities there that could go into this.
Yeah, HR, operational. I mean, whenever you've got an acquisition happening, there's going to be a lot of different moving pieces. I know Roxel has about 800 employees across both France and Britain. There's chance that locations that have been chosen by MBDA and Safran have originally chose now ends up moving, or there's a chance that leadership changes or comp and benefits analysis changes, organizational and process changes. There's so many different pieces, but fortunately, since it's not one company fully acquiring a brand new company, there should be less changes than in a usual acquisition of this type. We'll see.
And when you've got, 800 users, not all of them are going to be dealing with the design of the product, but when you have 800 employees, you've got a lot of folks who have to be put into the system, your PLM system, in the realm of P&O, people and organizations. And that's something that when we are talking about rolling out all these systems, we just kind of assume, hey, people are going to have access to the data, but the data they have access to, who can see what's protected, what's shared across different locations, and how all of the different various areas of a PLM process, your design, your testing, your manufacturing, your quality, how that is all put into this as far as who has access to what, is actually a whole huge process, which part of which we'll talk about in a bit with Justin. So I think for me, just looking at the massive size of this is making sure that your P&O is set up correctly.
Have we got time for my 2 cents?
Go for it.
Okay. Consolidation and integration of propulsion systems within MBDA's existing operations for me is the big one. Your challenge here lies in ensuring a smooth integration of Roxel's propulsion systems into the broader missile development and production processes. You've got to have your ERP integrated with your MESMOM. By integrating Roxel's propulsion systems into MBDA's existing ERP, it's that whole procurement piece. You can ensure that your seamless data flow and real-time tracking of production efficiency, cost control, and part availability across both organizations, both countries. So, and then with your MOM, you maintain your high standards of manufacturing. So for me, it's that ERP integration across the suppliers down into manufacturing, that seamless thread of data, procurement, finance, that's just going to keep this whole thing running smoothly for both parties.
And this is Brian, Andrew, and Greg reminding you that sometimes news can be interesting and hopefully fun to discuss. And in approximately 2 minutes, we're going to talk about the infrastructure side of everything with our special guest, Justin. So thanks, guys, for joining. We'll see you all in 2 minutes. All right, so now we're diving into the critical discussions side of everything. We've got a special guest, which is Justin Gable, or as I think Andrew accidentally renamed him earlier in the show, Abel Gable.
Gable.
But Justin he's our lead infrastructure architect for XD Innovation. And I guess.
And Justin comes to us with several years of experience across Boeing, Sierra Nevada, and Lockheed Martin in the defense sector. And did you say he's been around doing this for over 10 years?
Pretty close, yeah.
Yeah. Welcome, Justin.
Thank you, guys.
Mr. Abel.
Fuzzy background there, but his room is one of the coolest places you walk into. Like back here, I've got books and stuff right now. He's got like, it looks like are you running, some top secret government operations from your house with that server room and stuff?
If I was, I couldn't tell you.
Right. I meant to ask that question. Yeah. So Justin, thanks for joining us. We're just going to dive in and talk about, I mentioned that you are the lead infrastructure architect. So really quick, what is an infrastructure architect?
We get to help plan and lay out your PLM design for your company so that you can seamlessly move from either a previous version or a different manufacturer onto 3D experience.
And what does it take to be a good infrastructure architect?
Problem solving skills, keeping up to date with the technology, because the IT infrastructure is always changing no matter where you're going or what you're doing. And and enjoying the problem solving.
So how do you, or how do our customers, or both, stay updated with the latest tools and technologies, to your point, in infra design, especially for product lifecycle management platforms?
There's the news everywhere. I'm always looking at LinkedIn, obviously. I'm always looking at the tech news and stuff like that for IT. Staying up to date with what's coming out, whether it's cloud, whether it's AI, whether it's the different updates for new types of single sign-on, that kind of stuff. Just making sure that you're keeping your ear open and your eyes open and finding those things.
To the metal. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you said when you said problem solving, I used the wrong word there. When you said problem solving, aka putting out fires and making sure stuff works right, does this mean that every day is a little bit different in the job that you're doing?
Every day is definitely different. Every IT infrastructure is different, whether it's a hybrid or where it's partially on cloud, partially on-prem, where it's totally on-prem. Whether you have security protocols that you have to follow, it is ever changing. Everyone is a snowflake. They're all individual. They're all different.
Sounds somewhat challenging.
Yeah.
What would you say the biggest challenge is to implementing a PLM platform, especially one like 3D experience, where you want to have this one source of truth going through the entirety of your product lifecycle?
The biggest challenge, that's a great question. I don't know if I've thought of it like that. Everything is a challenge. I mean, working with a new IT team every other day, working with different types of IT technologies, like if they are hybrid, working with their cloud team or their on-prem team, or if they're combined. Just being able to communicate and get the answers that you need and get the right people involved when you need them to get the platform stood up.
I mean, do you have kind of a step-by-step methodology, a checklist for integrating 3DX into various IT environments, whether it's Azure or it's AWS? Is there a checklist you go through just to say, I need to check all the different things?
There are definitely some prerequisites that you have to go through. You have to make sure that you get, certificates. You make sure that your SAN is set up correctly in those certificates. Make sure that you get the DSLS and the licenses and stuff. So there's some top level stuff, but when it comes to actually installing a platform, there's no real checklist. The tech stack is going to be different, whether they're using Windows or Linux on the back end for the servers, that kind of stuff. It all is kind of like it ebbs and flows. It's not too much. There's high level checklists, but nothing really step by step to let you make it, let you get it.
So you look at the landscape and then rebuild a project kind of plan off the back of it.
Exactly. So
Okay.
you go into a customer, some customers will have secure SMTP, some people will have it wide open. Each one is like I said, it's a snowflake. And every time there's no set way that anybody does IT. Everybody's different.
So you can't just use the install wizard, click go, and let everything just happen for you?
Well, that's why I have a job. So I'm glad that you don't have to do that. But yeah, no, it's not like dropping in a disk for Microsoft Office and just hit setup and walk away from it. That doesn't happen in the PLM world.
And then you've also got to deal with the fact that sometimes as the person installing all this stuff, you get access to the systems you're installing it on. And other times, because of security, way a company's set up, you kind of have to more direct it as opposed to actually do it all yourself.
We have a customer specifically that we are not allowed to touch the keys. So they're ITAR compliant. They do a lot of defense stuff. And so I've actually taught the support person for this platform how to install it. And he actually uses exactly the same methodology that I do on how to document what you're doing as you're doing it, making sure that you can reproduce it. And reproducibility is very good, especially if you have more than one environment to set up. And he's an excellent student. So thank you, Andrew.
Not me, though.
No, not
me, Andrew.
Not him.
Another Andrew.
Yeah, different one.
We would know that this Andrew is not an excellent student. Is that what I just learned here?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I don't know. I've never had to try to teach this Andrew anything, so that's good.
Unteachable. Yeah.
What's when you're doing this with trying to like help people figure out how to do the methods and even troubleshoot, like, can you give an example of how you've helped somebody troubleshoot their infrastructure?
With hands-on, it's a lot easier. Obviously, you can use the tools that are built into the OS, that kind of stuff. But when you're hands-off and you have to help somebody else, it's a little more challenging. You set up obviously a Teams call or a group call, and you just, from the experience that we have, I just go through in my mind what I've gone through in the past, and we kind of look back in those things. With the same customer, we had that same issue recently with the 24X install, and we were able to get him moving in the right direction and got him up and running pretty easily. So,
What are the 3D experience infrastructure challenges associated with connecting up with an ERP or with a MES MOM, especially when you think about bidirectional compatibility, all as part of what we push out there every day: critical thread, digital continuity, seamless end-to-end ideation to customer? What are those infra challenges?
For me, the biggest part is making sure that you have the right connection between the systems, whether you're using an external system to do the communication between the systems or you're using APIs. If your pipe or the distance between there's too much latency, that kind of stuff, it can have a very negative effect on trying to keep those systems integrated to each other and in sync. So I always recommend trying to get them into either the same data center, up onto the same cloud infrastructure, so that you have the ability to, you don't have that latency, and the communication is much more seamless between those.
Do you come across any other challenges when you're connecting variable environments? You've got different legacy systems into 3DX, and if so, how do you mitigate those? Or have you dealt with it already in the previous question?
No. When you're dealing with legacy systems, not in your example though. Your example is with MOM and MES and stuff like that. Those are all relatively newer systems, so most of those are going to be pretty seamless to tie into, either with API or with an external component. But most of those legacy systems, we don't do too much with them. Sometimes with like the mail delivery SMTP, like I said earlier, or some of the other stuff, that can be legacy. But usually when you're dealing with ERPs and in your MESs and stuff like that, you don't have that kind of an issue.
Okay, cool.
So one thing that we talked about during the news portion of the show was how sometimes a particular life cycle of a product can last a really long time. So when you're planning as an infrastructure architect for the long-term viability of a PLM system, when you're looking at, like, say they're implementing 3D experience and it needs to work for quite a while, how do you go about planning that? What kind of things are you thinking of?
I'm thinking of being able to either spin up or spin down JVMs so that you can onboard more people or offload more people, depending if the project's going to stay on that platform. I like, for when I'm doing my planning, I like to make sure that your disks are infinitely expandable. If not, the downtime is very minimal. The database disks, there's shared data for different parts of the platform like dashboard and swim. So you need to make sure that those don't fill up. And in monitoring, you got to definitely make sure you have monitoring so that you can see what's going on with the platform. You can see if it's being used as it needs to be, or if it's not being used as much, you can spin down pieces of it so that you're not incurring costs for performance that you don't need.
Right.
So you're looking at, like, the type of data, how much data, and the size of the team to figure out if you're shrinking or expanding all of the network capacities and storage and everything, just to make it match the actual operation. So does this mean you've got to do a lot of, I guess, interviewing or discussions with the client on how they're planning on using it, and maybe they don't even know?
Yeah, it's that fact of you don't know what you don't know, right? So yeah, we try to go in and we see what they have in place right now, whether it's a new infrastructure or a new installation, or if they're migrating from an old one. We see how their data grew over the past year or so. We try to plan for 2x that growth, and if they're going to be spinning up more projects. So you need to ask the relevant questions on how they're using the system now. What are their future plans? What do they see going into the environment, in the near future and in the future? So you want to make sure that you can expand with them when they do start to grow their projects or their teams.
And are there any kind of indicators out there that you need to watch for to show when you're ready to scale?
Yeah, there's on the file system, there's disk size, there's performance. If they're seeing performance issues, you know that they're probably overutilizing the JVMs or something to that effect, and you can spin up new VMs very quickly with more capacity.
Do you have any best practices that you've discovered that you can share with us on using the infrastructure architecture for long-term viability of an infrastructure design?
The best thing that I have done in the past is just making sure that you have the things that you need to spin up or spin down on their own JVMs, so that it makes it much easier to add or remove capacity at will without having with the very minimal downtime or no downtime.
Right. Which sounds easy just to say, but it's a lot more difficult in actually the setting it all up.
Yeah, there can be some challenges for sure. Making sure that you have HA going or high availability, multiple not firewalls, but routers, traffic shapers, whatever you want to call them, F5 load balancers, so that you can do configurations on one and then swap to the new one, newly configured, and without any downtime. So I know we do this at XD with 3D Space and with dashboards and Passport, so that we can spin up new VMs very easily and with either very small downtime or no downtime at all.
Okay.
Let's just step back. Disaster recovery, another big one in your space. What approaches are you taking to disaster recovery, and have you encountered kind of specific challenges with DR in industries like defense or aerospace? And if so, how do you handle them?
Well, everybody knows disaster recovery is the 3-2-1, right? Three backups, 2 sites, all of that. So yes, you want to make sure that you have backups. You want to make sure that you've tested your recovery system. If you go through all this this time to plan out a disaster recovery, but you never actually switch over and test it, it doesn't do any good, because you're going to run into issues. There's always issues. So making sure that you have the right plan and that you're practicing that plan is very key.
Yeah, and I guess everybody knows that it's a 3-2-1, right? That's I mean,
if you're in IT, you do.
Yeah, IT, yeah.
So when speaking of things that everybody knows, when you're talking to an organization and they're planning for implementation, what is the one thing that you wish that every company knew before they said, "Hey, Justin, help me with this"?
The one thing that everybody should know before
they go into implementation, you mean, Brian?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
There's it's not always cut and dry. That it's not going to go like the Windows Microsoft Office install and stuff like that. So you need to make sure that you've got that you build in that time to have those kinds of learning experiences as you're going. So it takes time. Everybody has different IT infrastructure, right? Either they're cloud, they're on-prem, whatever. They have different SMTP. They have different security protocols that you have to go through. There's a bunch of different things that you don't think about when you're starting a project. Making sure that you get your certificates and that they have all the SAN, your alternative names and your certs, that you have your licensing in place, that you have your, all of these things. There's going to be places that you're not going to expect to have something go wrong that it will. So
do virus scanners ever play a factor in stuff going wrong?
Yes, they do. Some companies won't let you turn it off. Most do, but if you're trying to install a large platform onto multiple VMs and you've got the virus scanner standing in your way, it's very difficult for sure. It can break the installers, so it can wreak havoc.
Any tips on how you get these customers to deal with these issues before you start down that journey?
We've designed a questionnaire to help with that. Like, it'll give us some more information. We send that out with the pre-discovery kind of stuff, so that we can get on top of it before the implementation, so that we can start planning the tech stack. We can understand, the connection into the SMTP. We can understand if there's going to need to be another piece of software that needs to be put in place to integrate with the ERP or the MES. So
good.
So when you are, I guess, when someone's got to consider setting up the infrastructure for, let's say, an aerospace and defense company, as opposed to automotive or any other industry, what specifics do A&D companies need to pay attention to?
I would say probably just making sure that they're within compliance for their industry, making sure that they're doing their hardening of their JVMs, make sure that they have the proper security protocols in place, and that they do a very hard set of validation on the platform before it goes into production, for sure. Most places have security scans, and they'll do their security scans, and they'll give you the gotchas or where they think it needs to be tightened, and we can go in and help them with that, whether it's on the OS level or outside of that.
When you're talking about compliance within the industry, so like for defense companies, how much does say ITAR compliance have to be a factor?
ITAR is a big one, especially for the security and defense industry, right? There's a lot of things in ITAR, so it depends on what level. It goes all the way to badge access to hard locations and stuff like that, which it's not really an IT thing. We don't really comment on that stuff, but for the actual infrastructure and the platform itself, making sure that any third-party applications that you're using are known, that they're on the list, you know, that they're compliant. And then, yeah, I think that's right.
I got one. So with the whole push for the cloud, what challenges have you encountered that our listeners may not even think about when moving from on-prem?
Depending upon your cloud provider, there are costs associated with migration of data. So if you're going from on-prem to on-cloud, you don't think about that, you know, that gigabyte per second or whatever that is. I forget what it is on AWS. It's not on the front of my brain right now, but there's costs associated with that kind of data transfer. There's obviously costs associated with the spinning up the instances up on your cloud and things like that. You can turn them off. You can do different things to help mitigate those costs. But yeah, that was one of the bigger ones. They're like, oh my gosh, where did this cost come from? And it's all due to that bytes in and out into their new cloud infrastructure. So.
And that's coming from the cost of transferring data, and how much data is actually being transferred increases those costs. So like, what strategies do you implement to try to, say, reduce the time required for data migration?
I like to try to get with have the subject matter expert get with the customer and get rid of anything that they don't need. We like to have them create a collaborative space where they can put all the data that they do want to transfer, and make sure they go through it and they're not taking over collaborative spaces that were tests or that were our defunct projects. There's no point in moving data that you don't need, and it'll keep the new infrastructure size down as well. We're going through that with a couple of customers right now.
I want to open up a big can of worms.
Yeah, I was wondering if we wanted to go and do that.
I want to deal with the elephant in the room. For the last few years, the software vendors have been out there, cloud, let's go cloud. Everybody must go cloud. So are there benefits, because I've heard the cynical side of it as well, by the way, are there benefits of staying on-prem versus going to cloud? What are your thoughts around kind of staying on-prem, customizations, etc.? What do you think?
I like on-prem a little better. You have a lot more insight onto the platform. You can get the logs off of the VMs. You can do a bunch of tuning. It's a lot easier. On public cloud, there's a cost differential. Obviously, you have to maintain your own IT. You have to maintain the hardware, add to it if you're expanding, that kind of stuff. You don't have to worry about that on public cloud, and public cloud is also much less expensive, right? It's a great idea to start up. But once you're starting to integrate with your manufacturing processes and that kind of stuff, being on-prem is a lot easier to get those integrations going. Cloud doesn't have that capability quite yet. I know that they are working on it, but at this time, it's so much easier to get the entire platform plus the other systems outside of it working harmoniously. So.
You mentioned
for me sorry, I'm just going to say it speaks to there's no sweeping everybody should go cloud, and there's no sweeping cynicism of going on cloud. I think it really is every individual situation. What's your level of maturity? What's your integration issues? What's your familiarity with customization and the cost of ownership of bringing that forward, etc. So it really is an individual situation, and that's what we tend to look at rather than just coming in and saying, you know, you got to be cloud or you got to be on-prem. It's just really looking at everybody's situation. I agree.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's I think both of you mentioned a little bit customizations, which are possible and easier to do on-prem, but not necessarily on the cloud. And I just saw Justin saying, don't talk about customization. So why is that? Why did you just want to shush that conversation there?
Customizations make it very difficult to move from a previous version to a newer version. It is, in my mind, much better to try to evolve your engineering process versus trying to evolve the software to go into what you're trying to do.
I know what you mean.
So you've got engineers that have been doing it this one way, step by step, this one way for a long time, and it's difficult. Change is difficult, but you have a customization in the platform that says, it's triggering this and making it do that to help the engineers out. When you customize piece of software, it's very difficult to migrate that into the new environment. I know there are tools out there that help you do that. It never goes seamlessly. There's always some gotchas with either missing attributes or whatever it is on the customization side that you're trying to reinvent every time you need to do an upgrade. I've seen some customers that have been so customized that they can't get away from an older version that's now completely not supported. And it's not a good idea. I mean, the more you can make your processes an out-of-the-box process, the easier it is to be able to migrate to or move to the next version.
Especially with so many best practices that have been built up over the years. I totally agree. So I think the moral of the story for me is, if you're thinking, do I go cloud, public cloud, private cloud, or on-prem, hybrid, just call us and we will give you an honest, impartial view of what is going to be right for your personal situation, not just here, just do cloud, or here, just do on-prem.
Yeah, and you could start on cloud and then move to on-prem when your capabilities, then the cloud capabilities don't support what you need to do.
Yep. You got it.
And that's sometimes the customizations are going to be needed, no matter how much you're trying to find a way to go out of the box or do other things. So how do you balance the need for customizations with maintaining an upgradable and scalable system?
Every release of 3D Experience itself comes with new bells and whistles. Most of the times, if you're going from a really older version, say let's 21x, and now we're in 24x, maybe some of those customizations have actually been implemented in the platform because they said, oh, a lot of people are doing this to the platform. We probably need to support this within the software. So the more you can move your engineering processes to an out-of-the-box process, and to answer your question, I guess I'm kind of skirting your question, customizations are going to happen. We try to make it more configuration than customization, though. So we try to use, your EKL tools, those kinds of things, your data model customization within the platform that it supports, so that you can move those particular aspects on to the next version when you grow.
So it sounds like the overall takeaway here is that there is no just one solution fits everybody when you're trying to set up your infrastructure for a PLM platform. And
no, not at all. And everybody's different.
Want to have somebody who actually knows what's going on and has experienced the mistakes and the successes as far as how this process works. So yeah, and the bigger takeaway is that somehow, even with all of those stresses, Justin seems to really enjoy what he does.
Yeah, I like problems and I like solving them. So yeah, so does the rest of my team. The rest of my team is really strong with that as well.
Awesome.
Good.
Well, thanks for taking a few minutes out of your day to talk with us. And I think this has been, at least for me, super informative and fun. So hopefully our listeners think the same. And with that, everybody have a great rest of your day.
Same time, same place next week.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.